who are the co-authors of the Boundaries and about 80% of the material you've received through these weeks. And it was a great time. Just had a great, great time, a workshop on leadership, and I was glad to be with them and glad to meet them and tell them thank you for all the great work they've done for me and my life and my marriage and my kids. And it was really something else to meet with them, and it was just great. So I'm glad to do that. I'm glad to be back. And we've been talking, of course, about healthy boundaries. My hope is tonight that we'll get to do something at the end that I like to do at the end of every session, but we've just been a little more bound on time constraints. But at the very end, if possible, I like to do some role play with you. So as the night goes on, hopefully we'll have a little time, and even just 5 or 10 minutes, if you can think of a person in your life that you've had a hard time saying no to, or having a difficult conversation with, and you would pretend to be that person, and I'll be you on your good day. You with boundaries. So just think about that. There's someone in your life that you might want some help of how would I start this conversation, how am I going to do it, and I would role play with you. We've talked about healthy boundaries. We've talked about a lot of things, healthy boundaries. I hope you have the handouts from outside, boundaries with others and within yourself, internal boundaries with the spouse, with our children. Tonight we're going to talk about boundaries with God and then do a little wrap-up. And again, the handouts are outside, and you can also have more. They also have electronic copies they can get to you. And these sessions have also been recorded, and they're on your website. So feel free to go back and re-listen or send them on to people that you think might need some help in boundaries, or maybe they're too scared to read a book or don't read much, and maybe at least they'll listen to somebody, and that would be cool. Tonight, let's talk about boundaries with God. And this is a really, really important topic. It's going to be shorter than the other ones, but really important. Now, let's think about it just for a second, of course. God is the source of all boundaries. Now, I don't say that because I'm in a church building amongst other sisters and brothers in Christ, and I just got to. I'm not getting paid to say that. God really is the genuine source of all boundaries, even within himself. And as a triune being, God is one being in three persons, Father, Son, Spirit. They're not interchangeable, and they're not confused. Father, Son, Spirit are three individual persons and one being that is God. God is not only the source of our boundaries, he himself eternally practices boundaries. He is the source of that, and that's the foundation. I thought about starting tonight's session, Boundaries with God, the very first night, for this very reason, to say it's that fundamental. But I want to wrap up on a high, I guess, the big bang, I guess. No scientific pun intended, but all right, God is the source of all boundaries. I don't want that to sink in. So here's some examples of how God respects our boundaries. Just a few examples. For example, God assumes that his role is different from ours. Now don't forget, boundaries are about what we value, what the other person values, and not claiming responsibility for whatever it is theirs to own. We own what's ours to own. Well, God does that with us, and he assumes that his role is different from our roles. So God assumes that Jeff has work to do and that he has work to do. God assumes that I have work to do and that God has work to do. So they're different. Now, even though he inspires us, outside of rare miracles, all through the Bible, certainly through the New Testament, it's assumed that we have work to do. And I gave just a few examples here. We are to provide for widows and orphans. James doesn't say, just pray about it and manna will fall from heaven for every orphan on earth. We become the hands and feet of Jesus to people. We are to provide for the financial needs of others. We are to make disciples. We are to grow in our salvation, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, on and on it goes. We have work to do. And it's a different sermon, different topic. But that's the point of the resurrection, the ascension, that we continue on the work of Jesus. We continue on the work of Jesus and become metaphorically his body, his hands and feet to do the action. God assumes his role is not our role. That's one area where God respects our boundaries. Very different. So we have different roles in life. Very different roles in life. God allows us to feel our emotions, even when we don't like what he's doing. Much like healthy parents allow their children to express feelings toward them, even if the children don't like what the parents are doing. This means that God even allows us to be angry. We can be angry. We can feel a whole host of emotions. And if you don't believe that intellectually, go read all this, what we call the Psalms of Lament. And I give a few examples. In Job 13, I mean, they're just angry with God. Most people, I would imagine, don't feel permission to feel angry toward God, not because they don't know the Bible, per se. It's because they have people in their lives, like moms and dads and authority figures, who tell them, you shouldn't feel that kind of thing. You shouldn't do that. And so we feel a sense of shame and guilt. But it's not biblical. It's some outside voice, not the Bible, that tells us we shouldn't feel that. In fact, we have full permission to feel angry and upset. That's part of a normal, healthy flushing out of what we're going through in life. Feelings are just healthy ways to flush it out. Now, being obsessed in anger and hatred and resentment, that's different. That's what I'm choosing to keep spinning up, and I'll have a constant arm raised out protest mood, attitude. That's different from in the moment something happens, I feel a normal sense of anger. And anger can be a cause of a host of things. But nevertheless, he allows us to feel that. God doesn't control our emotions. He respects our boundaries in this life. Now, think about Jesus' earthly ministry. Remember in John, the worst verse, 6:66. Anyway, in John 6:66, if you remember, that's the part where Jesus tells the people, if you don't eat my flesh and drink my blood, you can't be a disciple. And it says, and many people left him. And in scholarship, we assume from a whole host of reasons, this was commonplace in the ministry of Jesus, that people left him all the time. They would follow him when he fed them. They would follow him when he gave them drink, give them fish and bread. It's party time. Healing the sick, wonderful. But as soon as he heads toward the cross, guess where they go? Mark 14:50. And they all fled. Not Peter fled. They all stinking fled. Everybody left. People left Jesus all the time. And he let them go. Dramatic pause. He let them go. Pharisees, come back, come back. No, he didn't do that, right? No, he just let them go. In fact, he told parables like the quote-unquote prodigal son, which should be called the forgiving father, but in Luke 15:11, of God who respects the people's boundaries. The son comes and says, I'm going to act like you're dead. Give me your inheritance now. My inheritance now. And he says, go. He let him go. He just lets them go. He respects boundaries in this life. He always gives people the freedom to reject him or love him. He calls people to him. He does not thrust them like a laser beam. He invites, come unto me, not get over here. So he invites. He respects our boundaries in this life. He's going to hold individuals responsible for which each person has done on earth. Like how Paul says in Romans 14:12. Therefore, each of us will give an account of himself to God. Not, therefore, each of us will give an account of our neighbor to God. Therefore, each of us will give an account of what our parents did to us to God. Right? It doesn't say that. It's us. That's a fundamental assumption of Christian theology, that you and I will be held individually accountable for our deeds. That is, God will not hold us responsible for what other people do on earth. He holds us responsible for what we do on earth. In fact, he respects our boundaries, what we do on earth, and just us on earth, and he's going to keep on doing it in the world to come. He's going to keep on doing it. God will not force people to serve him, love him. That doesn't make any sense. And he respects our boundaries not to love him. Hence, hell. Hell is God's eternal respecting of our boundaries to reject him. That's what hell is. God always respects our boundaries. He can inspire. I love how C.S. Lewis says, he can only woo, he does not coerce. He woos. To do otherwise makes us a slave. He didn't make us to be slaves. He made us to be loving individuals. He respects our boundaries. He does. Now, this is the part, when I used to study this years ago and still do it, I still, of course, study this material and let it make sure I am internalizing it. That part was great for me, and I got it. It's this next part for me that really helped change my prayer life and worship life for a while, and that's this part. We should respect God's boundaries. For example, God is always responsible for what he wants and feels. God is always responsible for what he wants and feels. God does not think that you're responsible for how he feels. God doesn't think you're responsible for what he thinks. God doesn't think you're responsible for what he does on the earth. For example, here's an example of how much most parents don't really understand that. It goes in a little expression like this to their children. That really makes God sad. That really makes him angry. Now, of course, without knowing it, what we're doing in such a simple phrase is we're teaching our children that it's their responsibility to be responsible for God and God's feelings. That's a horrible... What a burden that must be to feel like the God of the universe's feelings rest on my behavior with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Think about that. They can't remember to clean up their room, and yet they now have the burden that the God who created them is looking every second to tell whether or not he's going to feel a certain way. What a terrible, ridiculous burden to bear. And as always happens, eventually the kids give up trying and assume, like what happens with so many parents, that God must cut them off and withdraw his love because why? They can't make him happy. So God must be eternally sad with me, eternally angry with me. And what happens is the Bible and God himself become a shaming instrument for parents. Does that mean parents should never talk about with their kids? I'm not saying that either. I think there are times to say no, especially before they're Christian. That's sin, and sin displeases God, and that's not the way we're supposed to live, and he didn't design us to live that way. That's okay. But those are rare and far in between. That's to explain the role of sin. And even then, that's supposed to be age appropriate. Not they're 1, 2, 3 years old. That's not the time or place to even understand it. And that matures through time. But God is responsible for what God wants and what God feels and what God thinks and what God does. God, not us. We're not responsible. We're not responsible for that. God always has the right to say no, secondly. I love how Paul says in 2 Corinthians 12, 3 times I asked God to remove this thorn out of me, and God said, apparently, no. God apparently said no, and his answer was, I'm not going to do that. And Paul perceived, I'm sure in his mind, that he says, no, my grace is sufficient for you. So you're going to live with that thorn. And as most people know, that this is evidence that Paul was married. I just see if you're listening. I'm just teasing. Just teasing. It means he had teenagers. That's all that means. A thorn in his flesh. God always has a right to say no to us. Now, when we force God to do something, because he said no, right? He said no to our prayer request. When we try to test him, we're not respecting his boundaries. It's okay to ask God, can you change your mind? And that from all eternity, he would have decided that. And I can't get bogged down in that philosophical issue of time right now. But the Bible gives an example of that. Just one example is Luke 18, the parable. It's not okay to do immoral or risky or unwise things to get God's provision or rescue. Something that's really common in a popular level in Christian literature is the idea that you've got to test God, and if you're not being bold with your testing, you don't have faith. And God wants you to do crazy, radical things so he can show you that he's big enough to do it. And that's so unfortunate that that's nowhere in the Bible. And what happens is, of course, it becomes usually a warrant or an excuse to do crazy things with money and ethics and whatever and say, well, if he's real God, he's going to show up for me when I need him. Again, when we're trying to force him to do something, guess what we're trying to do? We're trying to manipulate him. We're trying to manipulate him. This is like what children do to parents. I'll see if he or she really loves me. I know he said don't let the dog out, but I'll do it anyway and see what they do. I mean, we're trying to force their hand. Well, if we're honest, we can do that with God. Thank you. And when God says no, we can have anger and resentment. Well, we're not respecting his boundaries. This is really common with people who abandon their faith. Now, I say immaturity with due respect. I just mean it as a not grown up, is what the word means. People who abandon their faith in God often do that because they're immature. Their understanding of God is that he has no boundaries. And so it's a temper tantrum. It's a serious one. It's a serious emotional and psychological temper tantrum, but a temper tantrum it is nonetheless. Fine. You didn't answer my prayer request to get that job, to get that car, to save my mom from cancer. And so sometimes it's other times it's still such a woundedness that they say, I will not respect your no. Right? And I've heard both. I've heard people out of just childish, I've heard people who the woundedness is so bad they still cannot respect God's no, and they don't want to get over it. They don't want to get over it. It usually fulfills some kind of deep need we have to feel self-righteous. And if I keep being angry at God, and it works with people, we think in our childlike state, if we're angry toward the person, it's a form of punishing them. Because anger is a form of withdrawing our love. and we assume that will hurt your feelings. And I want to hurt your feelings because you hurt mine. And so it's a form of punishment. It's what children do. And that's what adults do and children do toward God every single day. Not every Christian. I'm just saying it happens. It's such a commonplace thing. And I've met many people who have left the faith, and when I ask them, I've never met, I know they exist, but I've never met in all my life, I've never read a book from an atheist or skeptic who did not leave except for psychological or emotional reasons. They were hurt by Christians, a loved one died, something like that. Something like that. Sherry, you mind getting my son? Thank you. They cut off God to make him villain. So if you yourself struggle with that, if you feel like you have anger or resentment toward God, now that's the hard part to ask. And all these things can be easy if we just keep thinking other people. I'm asking you to reflect seriously about that too. If you find yourself, is your prayer life suffering? Has it suffered for years and years because something happened? Did a relationship not go through? Did you stop going to church for a long, long time because you were just so mad at them? That's a form of protest. We're protesting against God because we don't respect His no. Whatever it is, whatever God does, He does so utterly freely. That's why I put this whole quote, because it's worth the whole thing. Whatever He does, He's completely free. He is never under any compulsion. He's never driven by your guilt or my guilt or manipulation. And this is freedom. Listen to the sentence here. He never resents what He does. He never resents it. Think about that. How many of you, maybe you shouldn't raise your hands. How many of you have had parents? You do things for them, or you don't do it, but you either resent them for that, or they resent you for years and years because that one time way back when on Thanksgiving, or friends, or spouses. And many of us know what it's like to live under not our own resentment, to feel it toward other people when we haven't fully dealt with something and forgiven through that process, but also when someone else resents us for something they just won't let go. God never experiences that eternal feeling. He does not have the feeling of resentment. As if, I didn't want to do it, but Pam just wouldn't let it go, and I'm going to hold it against her for eternity. That would be, you see, isn't it a scary thought, just the weight. He gives and loves with absolute freedom. It's hard for us to imagine that because many of us don't know what it's like to be around someone who gives fully free. And I said this way back in the first week, that's one of the greatest benefits of boundaries, is that you start loving and giving with absolute freedom. I don't serve you because I have to. I don't serve you because you made a face and rolled your eyes. I don't make you this food because if you didn't, you would hold it against me. I don't. All that gets stopped with boundaries. And if I do it at all, if I lift a pinky, it's because I wanted to do it 100% freely. That's what boundaries does for us. It gives us the freedom to give completely freely. No strings attached. You don't thank me, I don't need to hear it. I didn't give for you to thank me. I didn't give to get something in return. I just give it freely. God experiences this within His triune being every second of all millennium, of all of eternity. He gives completely freely. He's not driven by guilt. As humans, I know ought to. Come on, Jesus, what do you think? Oh, I know, I wouldn't do it. I had boundaries. Oh, come on now. That's all you, Spirit. You're always merciful. It's not like that. There's no eternal conversation going on like that. Absolute freedom. To think about what Jesus, and I'm not saying this to just induce some emotional thing in you, but to think about that Jesus did what He did completely freely, knowing for a fact that even as He dies on the cross, there are people right in His midst who still reject it. That is freedom I don't understand. That is absolute freedom. So I hope that you think about in your own prayer life, Bible study life, and your own discipleship as you put into practice the teaching of Jesus. How do you talk to God? What do you expect from God? And when He says no to you in your prayer request, what is your emotional response? I know we can couch it in a whole lot of Christianese, and I just got to have faith, and that's true, you ought to have faith. But I'm really asking you, what do you feel when God says no to you? Well, I know I ought not. No, I don't know what you ought not. See, that's what Christians love to talk about, shaming messages. I shouldn't. I didn't ask you that. But do you? What do you feel? Well, maybe I felt sad, or I felt a little mad at him. He didn't heal so-and-so, or the relationship didn't work out. Okay, talk more about that. Or have you talked to him about that? Have you told God how you feel in your prayer life? He's a big God. He can handle it. He created emotions. He can contain them for us. And he wants to hear them. He wants to hear them. Do you think God, if you just pray a little more, God will then finally perk up and say, okay, I feel so guilty? Do you do a whole lot of service projects around the church expecting that God will somehow perk up? Okay. Then now they're being super Christians. They're getting close to Mother Teresa, and I got to perk up. Billy Graham's going to get jealous. Come on. We have to think real clear about what our motivations are and realize that God gives freely. Now, I'm going to shift gears. That's all I'm going to talk about boundaries of God for now, because I want to shift gears and talk about a little wrap-up. How do we measure success with boundaries? Now, just a quick review. I thought about this analogy a long time ago, and I was hit with it again when I was in the airplane going into California. We've all heard it. Those who have been in an airplane, given the seatbelt, how the seatbelt works and all that stuff. What happens? The air mask drops down. What do you do with the air mask? You give it to yourself first or your kid first? Always yourself first, right? Why is that? Because you want your kids to be damaged. No, right? No, it's because you want to harm. That'd be bad boundaries. No, the point, of course, right? Because if you pass out, you're of no good. Then it's two people who get hurt or dead or whatever. That's a sad thing. But you help yourself first so that you can help your child. That is exactly what boundaries is all about. Sure is selfish. That's what I told the flight attendant. Who do you think you are? That's selfish. Aren't you not a Christian? Wouldn't you give that mask to everybody first? The last shall be first. I'll go around the whole airplane, give it, make sure everybody's first, because that's who I am, and I just feel so terrible. I want to make sure they're all rescued first, and God wants to make sure we're giving in service. You would pass out and die immediately and not serve anybody. That's what he or she would say back to me. Of course not. You put on your mask first. Then you're able to help. Then you're able to do it. And boundaries does that for us. It helps us be real clear about what it is we value. Really clear so that we're able to act like the Christians God made us to be and keep helping others in freedom and love and service and so forth. The analogy I've also given several times is boundaries just land, property. Just keep drilling this in our head. If your neighbor came over and said, look at my car, it's full of pollen, you would look at him crazy. Then wash it. Well, why have you washed it? Because it's not my car. I mean, this would be nonsense conversation. You'd think, you are crazy. A lot of times we get that by physical things, but for some reason, we've all bought in, and all of our parents keep teaching us over and over and over, emotionally, that we have no limits. And we're all responsible for everyone else's emotional car. And they're responsible for my car. How dare you make me upset? How dare you make me sad? How dare you not give me what I want? Because that makes me angry. And so that's what happens. We say boundaries say, nope, there's clear limits on what's my emotional responsibility and what's yours. So I'm responsible for my own feelings, attitudes, behaviors, thoughts, not my spouse, not my best friend, not my BFF, not my kid. And I'm not responsible for yours either. And we get those real clear, life gets so much easier. So that's just what boundaries are all about. We're not driven by guilt. Ever again, a boundary person does not experience guilt with other people. They don't. No matter how much your mom just lays it on thick. Sure, it's been a long time since I've seen those kids. Oh, and they just starts crying, get a little tissue. Your heart doesn't skip a beat. You don't get anxious. You go, that sounds hard, Mom. What's something you think maybe you want for Christmas? Or how's dinner? Or you just change this. You're not bound by that. You don't feel guilty anymore. You don't. Because you assume it's your mom's job to deal with mama feelings. You also assume it's not your job to fix mama's feelings. There's just the weight you take that home. I don't want it. Well, I hope you get some counseling, Mom. If you can't get over that, I'll pray for you. Well, anyway, we'll talk more about guilt in a second. What's going to happen when you start establishing boundaries? Some of you have already experienced this a little bit. What happens when your boundaries are violated? You're going to get angry. You're going to get angry. You'll get angry. You'll get angry. You'll get angry. Just feel the freedom of the words. I want to be angry. That's it. It's going to happen. You should feel angry. You should feel anger when it happens. Why is that? Because anger in that situation is a signal to us that our boundaries have been violated. It's a signal that what we value is being taken advantage of. So the first sign that you have someone violating your boundaries is going to make you a little ticked off. Someone on the inside is going to go, It should. It should. That's the first warning signal. That's your first red flag. Ding, 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 ding. Here's your sign. A little something, your heart starts racing. Makes me mad. I shouldn't feel that. I'm a Christian. I should never feel angry. See, no, that's not true. No, it's not true. Jesus overturned the tables. There are times for overturning the tables in life, and it's when it's righteous indignation. It's not right what they're doing. And right now what they are doing is yelling in my face. Or right now what they are doing is trying to make me feel guilty. Right now what they are doing is trying to manipulate me, and that makes me mad. Don't do that. Your inside of you is so precious and so valuable. You're not going to come in here and try to steal my stuff. This is my soul. What are you doing? Don't talk to me like that. You've lost your mind. So whatever your thoughts are, I'm not saying you say all those things, and sometimes you should, but you should feel anger. You should. Now, of course, this is the question to ask yourself. Do you feel, or do I feel permission to feel anger? Now, right now, I'm trying to ask you the hard questions. Not, does your spouse feel it? Do your friends feel it? Do you personally feel permission to feel anger? If you have not given yourself permission, you won't feel it. You'll stuff it deep inside in the sense of shame and guilt. Oh, Christians don't ever feel mad. Do you feel permission to feel anger? Just to feel it. If you grew up in a home where you had a mom or dad who was an addict or had some serious disorder, especially these people, you almost certainly will not feel permission to feel anger. Because people like that who have serious disorders and addicts, it's textbook. It's just textbook, where they do not allow children to experience negative emotions toward them. You can feel it to other people, but not to them, because that would mean they would have to take accountability for their addicts, the nature, their addiction, or their disorder. So you can feel mad at your brother, your sister, the plant, the dog, kick the dog, you can do whatever, but you can't be mad at me, or you'll have hell to pay. And so we grow up as adult children, and that part of them, they never gave themselves permission because they were never given permission as a child. And they just stayed with them all those years. So there has to come a time when you say to yourself, I feel permission to get angry. I feel permission. It's going to take small baby steps, but you got to feel it. And then when it happens, you just tell the truth, just like God does. God tells the truth. That was not right what he just said. It was not right what she... Hear that right language? That's justice language. And that's when it's right to be angry. It's not right that he tried to steal my stuff. It's not right that she talked to me in that tone of voice. It's not right that my boss talked down to me like that. It's not right. It's not right. It's not right. It makes me angry. Even if I go to the bathroom and start talking to myself, that makes me angry. Just embrace it like a big old hug, because that's your feelings, and you're right to feel the anger. You will get angry, and that's the first warning sign. So embrace it. Instead of denying it, instead of running away from it, love it. Just because you get angry doesn't mean you lose control. Doesn't mean you cuss them out. Doesn't mean you stop being a Christian in behavior. It just means that right now I'm trying to get us just to focus on the fact that we should feel it. We should feel it. Secondly, when you start having good boundaries, you're going to become drawn to boundary lovers. You're just going to want to be around them. They're so stinking refreshing. You love them. They make you feel safe. Why is that? Because you don't ever get attempted, manipulated, guilted into something. They don't hold it over your head. You don't experience resentment. They don't blow up at you. They don't do that verbal regurgitation on you because they've been bottling it all up on the inside. No, they have good boundaries. They're not duplicitous. They're not hypocritical. You don't meet Bob on one day and a Bob the next day, and you never know what you're going to get. You don't meet them like that. You just, I want to be around. I just get around Jeff, and every time around Jeff, he respects me, even when I say no, even when I don't want to go to that restaurant, even when I don't want to watch that movie. He does not withdraw his love from me, and boy, that just turns me on. I want to hang out with Jeff because he likes me for me, not the me who says yes, not the me who cuts his grass, not the me who does his cars, not that me, but me. And I do that with him. And that makes me feel so safe. It makes me feel safe. They just seem so honest and caring, refreshing. Oh, man, if you've experienced this before, when I'm talking about it all, been a boundary person, it's okay to raise your hand. I know it's not a Pentecostal church, but all right. I'm just kidding, just teasing you. It just feels refreshing. You get on a person and go, whew, I like that person. I just feel like they were just their own selves. It's just a good thing. It's just a good thing. Now, of course, if you're weak at it, if you're weak at boundaries, you're going to, like I said in the handout, bottom of 16, it's going to feel like you're being rude. It's going to feel like, and when they say no to you, it's going to sound like they're being rude. They're not. And as you grow up, that goes away. That goes away. I was talking to one of the women who worked for the Cloud and Townsend organization this last week, and she said they get letters all the time. Not many, but they've gotten letters. I mean, they first wrote Boundaries in the 80s. So that's a lot of letters over the years. They get letters all the time from people who were furious, angry at them and said, your book ruined my life. Or who do you think you are telling people it's okay to be so rude and hateful? You ruined my life. I put these things in practice and I lost everybody. Of course, the answer is that means boundaries worked. It worked. Because it means not because you left them, because they didn't like you. They didn't love you. They wanted you to do what they wanted. Which means you didn't have a self. Let that sink in. That means you didn't have a self. You were nothing but a chameleon. A tired, sad chameleon who had to dance to everybody's tune but your own. And that is not why we were created. It's not why we were created. So it's going to sound rude and mean at first, but you'll get over that. Because you'll find there's other people who say no or no thank you to you, and you just, oh man, I love it. Just say it. Bring it on. Because I know, and I know this, I've been in church work for 15 years. I know really, really, really well to read people's sign language, their body language, as it were. And they'll be, if I ask them to do something, whatever it is, what do you think about so-and-so? And I just watch their body, and they're kind of, and they start kind of moving their neck around a little bit. They look away, and they might start sweating a little bit. I think maybe I kind of want to, and I go, no, it's okay. It's okay. I immediately go, it's okay to say no. And they'll look at you for a second like they've never heard those words before. I've seen it. This is like a puppy dog stare. And I go, and I'll say it again. You're safe with me. It's okay to say no. It's okay. Well, I'm not sure if I think I'm kind of I said, it sounds to me like you're hesitant. Maybe it's best if you don't do it. Okay, well, it's not that I don't want to. I said, it's okay to say no to me. Right? It's okay. It's okay. Now, what I'm thinking is, I really don't want you to do this because you will resent me later. And that's the last thing I need as a teacher or a leader or a servant at my church resenting me all the while. Because guess what will happen? They'll do it. Every time they see me, they will associate me with resentment. I don't want to teach. I don't want to teach. Well, I tried, but he talked me into it. All the while, I begged them to say no if they didn't want to do it. And they'll resent me. And then guess what happens one day? They slowly don't start showing up to the job, right? They just call in every other day and then have to go have a conversation. Having a hard time getting a hold of it. You see, and it could have been prevented by one simple word. No. So save me the time. I'll tell people all the time. When I started my new position at this church, I went around to I had a one-on-one meeting with every single leader or teacher, and I said, I know how it works, and it's easier a lot of times to get out of position. You might have felt a little bit manipulated to get into, or maybe it's just your season to back out. Now's your time. You're completely safe. Now, in general, it's safe with me anyway, but I want you to know that it's okay. If you want is this your time to back out? No hard feelings, no. And no one took me on it. I said about 15 times, Pam, I said, I'm telling you, really, it's okay. I just need to know now because I don't want to wait a year down the road and you felt guilted from the previous guy or something, which would have been their fault anyway. But I didn't say all that. I said, there you go. But you'll get over the rude part. It'll feel good. You'll need to join a safe group. The boundaries can't be developed in a vacuum. You can't just read a book and then you're over it. You need to find support in like-minded, safe people. Not flawless people who never ever have a boundary problem or don't ever say that word or whatever. Just non-judgmental and safe. So you'll need to find you to be in safe groups of people. At least one or two of the people, but obviously good small groups are really good to have them. Small groups where you have your group where you start practicing safe baby boundaries. Where they love you as you, not the you who says yes to them, but you who says yes and no to them. You who has different interests than they do, and they're okay with that, and they welcome you. You like to rock climb? I don't like rock climb at all. Man, that's crazy. You want to get some dinner? Sure, let's go. Not, I don't have anything in common. And they, and protest. You don't want just, man, take your flip-flop off and shake the dust off of that and say, God bless you. I'm going to go find, if there's one person in the entire church that can do it, then go find that one person and just become BFFs. Just that one, you want to find a safe group. Just one, you want to find them. So keep looking for them. And in that community, you'll be able to practice baby knows. And they'll be able to celebrate with you. Right? They'll be able to do that. You'll better understand what you value and defend it better. When you have boundaries, you'll better understand what you value and defend it better. You will. When I started establishing better boundaries, it really helped me get real to the root, put my finger on things and articulate things. I didn't realize how much I valued this until I started having to kind of defend it, because I started getting mad about whatever it was, and I didn't know, why am I getting mad? Why am I getting angry? Well, I bet a boundary is being violated. What boundary? What am I as I value? And that's the thought process, right? That's exactly it. And I can finally articulate, I value this. I don't like it when people try to do this, because I like this. And when you really get articulated, you really kind of hug it, then you want to defend it more. And at first, you're going to get hypersensitive. Every time someone violates that boundary, you're going to make don't you tell me that. I mean, you'll get really emboldened because you realize, man, I can do this. I can do it. And that will go away. You'll start calming down and say, no, thank you. No, thank you, with a smile on your face. But you're going to understand what you value, and you're going to defend it better. And so that's the thing. You'll get more clarity, and you're going to do a better job. Because you'll know when it's coming. You'll know when they start making their face and trying to say those guilt messages. You go, you'll know it's coming. You just get it, and it's going to be good. So boundaries help you do that. What do I do to do the boundaries? You practice them. You practice little baby knows, and you do baby steps. Baby steps. So what about Bob? Baby steps to the elevator. Just a little bit at a time. Find one safe person in your life with whom you can say no to. There's a certain good friend of mine who had a problem with boundaries, and his name rhymed with Jeff, and he had a hard time with this. Way back then. And he had problems with saying no. And so we were talking about this years ago, and I said, of course, internally I'm thinking, I'm going to help him get over it. I did not help him at all, he says. And so I said, I'm going to help him. And I knew that he had a problem with, saying no, especially to a friend. I thought, of course, I'm thinking, I'm a safe friend. I'm the person who likes him even if he says no to me. Good heavens, I'm safe. I'm not going to withdraw my friendship or love based on that at all. So what I started doing was, in all loving kindness for Jesus, I started asking Jeff to give a testimony at my church. Just me and him over lunch. I said, Jeff, I really would love to hear. I would love for the people to hear what God's been doing in your life. I really mean that. Would you mind doing it? Coming up? And you should see. I've never seen a white person get that white. I've never seen. It was not that bad. It was not that bad. It really wasn't. And and I go, really? I just want you, and of course, I'm sorry. It was so terribly satisfying on the inside to know that I just want him to say no. That's all I want to practice. And it took a long time. And then I asked, he remembers this. And the next time I'd meet him, I'd ask him again, Jeff, have you been thinking about it? Let me think about it. We're going to pray about it. All right, I'm going to pray with you. I knew he wouldn't do it. I knew. And I was okay with that. I just wanted, and then finally, after like the third or fourth conversation, I said, Jeff, it's okay to say no. Okay, I don't think I'm going to do it. I'll do it. And then right after, that's all right. I said, all right, okay, well, that's cool. Do you mind going and praying for the meal? He didn't like to pray for the meal either, so we started with that one. And finally, he started praying. To say, we just practice. No, of course, I did that to lovingly shove him on to practice baby steps of no. And I'm safe, and so I want to help, and he's safe for me. He's safe for me. So if I say no to Jeff doesn't cut me off because I said no to him. No. And so I want to be a person I can practice those things with. When I was having my worst time with boundaries is when I started establishing boundaries with my mom years ago. And I knew the risk of the boundaries. I knew it. And I knew the risk was the fact that, like this next one, let me tell you the story of my mom in a second. When you practice in the community, it allows you to say no and doesn't withdraw love. Like I said, that's a safe community. So when you practice baby no's in your community, you will see that safe people do not withdraw their love from you. there's a chief sign, and many people, many of us, have unhealthy relationships with people. We're quote-unquote friends with toxic people, just toxic people, people who take from us and don't ever give. And if you know someone in your life right now, and some of you are already nodding, which is good that you already got someone in mind. If someone is taking from you all the time and they're not giving at all, it's because you're allowing them to. Ticks don't want to drop off. That's how they survive. If you were a tick, would you want to drop off naturally? Well, that's what happens. So, we want to in a safe community with people who say, you know what? I'm not going to draw love from that person. We feel that, and it's very rescuing. That's only in a safe community. So, back to my mom. We have to get ready for people who are not ready for your no. And I talked about this way back the first week to kind of to give you a little bit of get ready for this early on in case you started practicing it early on. Remember, if they're immature, they're going to react with some form of anger, physical or verbal. It's going to be some kind of anger. It's a childish response that we all learn when you're a baby. We didn't learn it. We just did it as children. And that's what we throw temper tantrums. They get more elaborate the older we get, but that's what they are. It's our way of protesting against a no. It's a protest. And so they're going to do that. And I remember when I first started establishing some well-needed boundaries in my relationship with my mom, I knew that one of the possible consequences of my boundaries, I knew that I would probably lose her, that eventually she wouldn't love me with the boundaries. She just wanted me who did what she wanted. And that's what happened. She eventually cut me off. Now, my mom has a particular disorder where not every parent does that. So if a person doesn't have a serious psychological disorder, here's what's probably going to happen. Here's what's going to happen to you in your life if the person doesn't have a serious disorder. They're going to protest. They're going to protest. The degree to which they protest is going to depend on their immaturity. Is it like, oh, that makes me sad. Why can't you come home for Thanksgiving? We already got 2 turkeys. There's going to be a little bit of protest, all the way to the extreme of, fine, click. Or why don't you be like your brother? I mean, they're going to amp it up. They're going to escalate because they're angry. They're protesting. They don't like your no. That's going to happen. But if they're not outside of serious disorders or some other, maybe a major addiction and so forth, eventually the risk of losing you is greater than their pain, and they'll give in, they'll de-escalate. And they'll see that you are safe even though when you say no to them. Eventually they'll just say, oh, okay. Now, they won't give up too easily. They'll wait till Thanksgiving and try to make you feel guilty for buying 2 turkeys the next year. Remember that time 6 years ago, bought them 2 turkeys? Let it go, Mom. Or not, hold on to the rest of your life, that's fine, but I don't feel guilty by that. But I also don't appreciate that you keep bringing it up, because it seems like you're trying to make me feel guilty. Is that what you're trying to do, Mom? You narrate that conversation every second. But get ready for their immaturity. Just get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get emotionally prepared. When I have this meeting with my boss, this will probably happen. When I have this meeting with my spouse, this is probably going to happen. When I have it, this is what's going to happen. When I have it, just get emotionally prepared for it. And do not give in. Do not give in. You know, when people practice for the military, Colonel attests to this, one of the chief functions of military when you first join is to absolutely tear you down. They don't want you anymore. They don't want you. You are worthless out there. You're not a man, you're not a woman, you're nothing. You're not military, you don't deserve to wear the uniform. And their goal is to rip you apart and form you into the image of G.I. Joe and G.I. Jane. That's their whole goal, is to wear you out. People who are emotionally prepared for that, if they go on from that and then make it to like Navy SEALs, and they do a lot of research, what does it take to go through the SEALs? They realize they're going to try to do it again and wear you out because you ain't nothing. You're not a SEAL, you're nothing. Those who are more emotionally prepared for it stay in longer, do a little bit better. They know they're not going on a resort. They know they've seen some documentaries, they've talked to friends. They just know what's coming. They know they're going to be yelled at and cussed at and be told all kinds of awful things about their mother and in front of everybody. They know what's coming. Not every military, they know that. Well, that's kind of how it is with immature people and boundaries. We have to get ready for that. Get ready for the boot camp. And when you leave, guess what happens? You do a holy dance. You just go, whoa! You're so excited and you celebrate because you didn't feel guilty. You gave in. Now, at first, you're going to feel a little guilty because you're immature in this area. But eventually, you'll give in and say, I'm not going to be ruled by immaturity, by my guilt. I'm going to say no to my guilt. Stick in there, stick in there, stick in there. I'm going to celebrate when it happens. No matter how much you think is insignificant, you're going to celebrate. You're going to celebrate. You're going to celebrate. No matter what, no matter how insignificant, you're going to do it. And you're going to have those safe people in your life who are helping you celebrate. Man, the other day, Jeff, I was having such a boundary problem with my boss, and I said no. He asked me to do so-and-so, but it wasn't on my job description, or I was overload, and I said, I'm sorry, I cannot do that. And he goes, well, I don't like that. I understand you don't like that, but I can't do it. And then I got over it, and I did it. And that's when a good friend says, man, congratulations. He validates, way to go. That must have been tough. It was tough, but whew, I did it. And as soon as you do that, I'm telling you, you're going a different route in life. There's a movie called The Matrix that came out years ago. And in The Matrix, there's a one scene where Keanu Reeves, the main character, he has to choose between two pills to take to see whether or not he wants to go on to real reality or the reality that was fake that he thought. And the main character says, he asked Neo, Keanu Reeves' character, and says, choose one, but one goes a totally different path than the other. Once you take one, you never go back. And of course, that's mostly true because there's a character in the movie who tries to get reimplanted right. But mostly, you can't go back. That is exactly how boundaries work. And everybody who's established boundaries will attest that's how it works. Once you start establishing healthy, loving, safe relationships, you will never go back. And your radar for boundary-less people becomes so much more acute and sensitive. And you'll go, ding, 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 ding. You'll walk left, you just kind of, oh yeah, I like that one. And you just will naturally, and it's not even subconscious, which is partly there. It's also just deliberately. You are deliberately aware. That person doesn't respect my boundaries, that one kind of does, but he's got this problem here. But as long as I keep maintaining my boundaries, he might give in and it might be worth the relationship. Try that for a little bit. Nope, didn't work. All right, how about her? And you'll just find yourself, you won't go back. And you'll look back and go, I can't believe the stuff I used to do and the guilt I used to feel, the manipulation that used to work on me. I used to say all the time, man, they make me feel so bad. I haven't said that in years. And I personally haven't said that in years. They make me feel. They don't make you feel anything. And once that becomes part of your life, it just drops out of your vocabulary. It just drops because you're not manipulating anymore. It doesn't work on you. The guilt messages don't work. Ding, ding, just bounce right off. They turn from the sticky Velcro to just bouncy balls. They bounce right. They don't work on me. I'm not responsible for your emotions. Now, the hard thing, I'm going to end on this one last hard note. But it's happy too. Do you try to make people feel guilty because they don't respect when they say no to you? When people say no to you, do you try to make them feel guilty? Are you a king or queen of manipulation phrases or guilt expressions? Do you get really angry when your friends or family or spouse or whomever says no to you? Do you respect people's boundaries? Do you hold it against people when they don't do what you want? Do you have a hard time letting it go? Does it make you feel good to hold on to things and hold grudges? Would your friends or family would they describe you as a person who holds on to grudges? These are questions worth asking. These are the hard questions worth asking. Whatever it is, get to reality. Just whatever it is, get to reality and say, you know what, I'm just going to embrace reality. Whatever it is, this is the truth. Yes, I do try to make feel guilty. Yes, I sometimes get angry. Sometimes I hold it against them, or I go on and on and on, or I try my best to talk them out of it, or I'm just a double talker. I'm a boundary buster. Maybe I'm really good over here, but when it's this area of my life, or with my spouse, or work, or whatever, I just am horrible. I can't hear the word no. So just start with reality, confess that to God, confess it to a safe, good friend or a community group, and say, I need help. I want to respect boundaries because I'm expecting you to respect mine, and I'm going to get the big old fat 2x4 in my own eyeball right now. It kind of smells like Jesus, doesn't it? Sounds like a parable I once heard. And he says, I want to get that out of my eye first before I can do that. And so if you can find a good, safe friend that says, you know what, you do violate my boundaries a lot. You try to. You're right. You do try to talk me into going to the movies. You do try to talk me into so-and-so. I still love you, but you do. That is reality. You try to do that. How can I help you not do that? And if you're really wanting it, you say, every time I do it, please call me on it. Because sometimes now I feel I do it so much as just subconsciously I try to talk into it. So call me on it, and that your friend will say, will do, will do. Sue, don't forget, you're trying to talk me into it again. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I was just saying at the time, nope, no excuses, right? You want a good, safe friend who doesn't give you excuses. You want someone to love you enough that they don't want you to stay the same. You need to go read about 80 to 90% of the literature from the handouts comes from these books. All of my stories and analogies are mine, and I added probably 10 to 15% of my own material. But most of this comes from Cloud and Townsend books. And so I go. The classic is Boundaries, written in the 80s. He said they wrote in the 80s. It still sells 10 to 15,000 copies a month. A month. Then they wrote it, because that was so popular, they, of course, went on and said boundaries with marriage, boundaries with kids, boundaries with teens. And these are all, case-specific. And, again, I use their material all the time. I love them. I told both Henry and John, I said, I should get royalties by how much I recommend your literature. At first, they paused, and they started laughing. I mean it. Changes That Heal is an outstanding book. I just was a wonderful one. Safe People, how to find and spot safe people in your life is really good. Beyond Boundaries is what happens after you have been establishing good boundaries with a person. Maybe they hurt you and so forth, and your heart, you're still wounded, and it's hard for you to open up. That is, your boundaries are like a 30-foot wall versus an 18-foot wall, and no one gets in you anymore because you finally got so excited about boundaries. Beyond Boundaries is to help you get past that. It's not to go overboard for too long. And there's a season when you need it. There's a season when you need, for certain people who are really toxic, really big, strong boundaries. But eventually we'll get to a place where we always negotiate those. CloudTownsend.com, CloudTownsend.com, not Cloud and, but Cloud Townsend is a great website. On July 13th, I think 11:30 to 2:30 Central Time, I think it starts at 9:30 Pacific Time, Boundaries for Today is a live webcast. They haven't taught together on boundaries, I think, in 4 or 5 years on the same stage. But they're doing it at a church in California, I believe, and they're going to do a live simulcast on that whole event. And so it's, was that about 3 hours, is that right? Yeah, about 3 hours long. They'll do a whole presentation on it, Q&A time. So if you can take their word for it, if this hasn't sunk in just yet, or if you want to hear it again, I'm gonna be trying to tuning as well. And even the church or individuals, go to their website right there, and you can see it, Boundaries for Today, and when it comes on, it'll just be live cast. And the men themselves will be on there. And last but not least, just to let you know, if you want, I've got a blog. At Pastor Penny is my Twitter, and my wife, Elaine, it's on the paper there, but at the bottom of the screen, but it's on the paper as well. My wife, ElainePendergrass.com, she has a website that is called Teaching Kids About God, and it's a wonderful resource for parents. It gives real good practical things you can do to help your kids learn about God. Ways to have theological reflections and ways to help train them. It's really, really good. So I hope, I'm also on Facebook. I would love to, look me up on Facebook, David W. Pendergrass, and I would love to be your friend, BFF, and, question. In my Twitter account, I try to send out just encouraging stuff. I don't talk about the weather and the Steers or Cowboys or something, but it's all that to say, if it encourages you, I try to send out encouraging stuff about boundaries and the Bible and so forth, so you're welcome to check that out. Well, we're almost done. Does anyone, in this last little bit, have a person that you want to role play with? Anything in your life? You've had almost an hour to think about that person. Anybody want to do it? So what you're going to do is you're going to pretend to be that person, and I'm going to be you on your perfect boundary day. Anybody in your life that you've had a difficult time? Could you come up here? Do you mind? All right. What's your name? Pete. Hi, Pete. Let's give Pete. Thank Pete. Thank you. Perfect. Hi, Pete. Rocky. That's your real name, right?
Who?
Rocky.
Rocky?
Yeah, it's your real name?
Yeah.
Good. Just wanted you to know that.
Oh, okay, good.
Pete from Peter, Petros, the Greek word for rock.
Oh, okay. Got it. I have a friend of mine that I've been talking to for several months now that, and I won't mention his name.
Okay, just make up a new name. What's the name? Let's make up a new name.
Bill.
Bill, all right.
Okay.
So you got a friend named
You're
Bill?
Pete, right?
Okay, yes, right. That's correct. That's right.
You're going to be Pete.
So tell me a little about the situation. And
well, he sees changes in me, and he's kind of reaching, but he doesn't. He's got all this negativity about him, about Christ. Not so much God, but Christ. He doesn't believe in Christ.
Okay.
He believes in God, but not Christ.
Okay.
And I'll throw some things out at him every so often, and I know kind of when to back up because he also drinks.
Okay.
So once he gets to that point, that one drink, I know to go ahead and back up from trying to say anything to him. But before that drink, we will sit and kind of not argue, but discuss back and forth.
Okay. What's he doing to try to violate your boundaries? Or what's the difficult conversation you're trying to have? Just about God? Or maybe about Jesus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was talking to him the other day, and
Okay, do you want to be Bill?
yeah, I'm Bill.
All right, let's go ahead and do that. So you're
Okay.
Bill, I'm Pete.
And I don't believe in God. I don't believe in Jesus. I believe in God, but I don't believe in Jesus.
All right, well, Bill, thanks for taking the time to meet. I'm glad that you came, and I've really enjoyed our conversations about God, and, for a long time we go back, and I've always enjoyed that.
Yeah, but all the stuff that you say, it's just interpretations. It's interpretations
Okay.
of people from the book and whatever, so that's all that is.
All that I have to say about Jesus is interpretations?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have
Okay.
a problem with that.
Okay.
I have a real problem.
Well, good. I'm glad you have a problem because I would love to talk about it. Is it okay if we talk about that now?
Sure.
Cool. What's your problem?
I just don't believe everything that they say in that book. I don't believe it. I believe in God, but I don't believe in Jesus himself. And so when you tell me it's something that it's come from the Bible and it's Scripture and this, that, and the other, it's just interpretations of scrolls from years back.
So what's the problem you have?
I would like to feel and be convinced that there is a Jesus.
Oh, okay. So you would like to be convinced of that?
Yeah.
Of Jesus. What would it take to convince you?
Well, that's the part I don't know, and Pete doesn't know either.
All right.
That's the problem. That's one of the problems.
So
I've got my boundaries. Now I'm Pete again. I've got my boundaries.
Okay.
And that it kind of whacks off right there.
Okay. So Bill, I hear that you're saying that historically in our conversations, I haven't been able to help you in this area.
Yeah.
So can you think?
I'm working on that. Pete's working on
Pete,
that.
well, I've been working on that, Bill. I've been working on it. So I appreciate your patience with me because, I'm still learning myself, and I love to learn, and I appreciate these conversations because you know what, Bill? It causes me to go off and talk and read and think about these things, and there's no better topic on which to reflect. So I'm so happy that you spurred me on, and you make me a better human and a better Christian because these are great questions to ask.
Good.
But if we thought just for a second, Bill, what do you think it would take to convince you? For example, let me help you. If you can't think of anything, for example, would a blood sample of Jesus convince you, or a hair sample if I made him appear now? What would it take to convince you that Jesus, as you said, is real? I think that was the word you used.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I don't know what Hank would say.
Okay. All right.
I don't know.
That's his middle
I
name,
can't-
Bill.
Bill.
Yeah. Bill. Well, that's fair. It's okay that you don't know what would convince you. That's okay. That's okay. We just kind of start where we're at. Well, instead of think of it that way, since that may not help us out too much, let me ask you this question, Bill. What do you not find convincing about Jesus?
I'm not sure what he would say about all that.
Okay.
I really don't.
So you don't know what you don't find
No.
convincing either. Just something
No.
about it's just interpretations.
Yeah.
Bill, I'm curious about that interpretations. You've said it a few times. Because I like that word. I'm just curious how you're using it. What do you mean when the Bible is just full of interpretations? What? Help me understand what you mean by that.
I'm not sure how he would respond with that either.
Now, I'm now out of character. Have you asked this before? These kind of questions?
No.
Okay.
No, we haven't gotten that far.
These are good questions to ask.
Yeah.
So let's assume for a second. All right. Well, it sounds to me that Bill, these are some things I would encourage you to think about. Because first of all, I love talking about this, and I hope I've demonstrated that I'm a safe place to talk about this, because I am a safe place to have questions and to doubt and I'm telling you, brother, I'm a safe place, and I want you to know that I don't judge you for having questions. I still have questions. I don't have all the answers figured out. None of us do, but I know I don't. And I want you to know that I'm a safe place. And so I really appreciate and value the fact that you've talked about this with me. I really mean that. Second thing I'd say is it would help me have clarity of what it is, Bill, you want to talk about. If you thought about a little bit those kind of questions I ask you, what would you find compelling? What kind of evidence would you need to find compelling whatever it is you disbelieve in? And if you can't think of that one or both of them, think about what is it you don't find convincing? And I hear those words, interpretations and so forth. What do you mean by that? I'm curious, Bill, what evidence you have for your belief? So do you mind reflecting on what evidence you have for your belief? And can we talk about this again? Well, that'd be great. Well, help me up. We'll talk soon. Okay. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Pete. Good work, yeah. And that's a good question. So in that sense of boundaries, so of course, what did I do with his, as far as boundaries, what did I do with what he has to say? Just reflect a little bit with me. I validated that he's asking questions, that he's curious, and what else? That's good, yeah. I told him I was a safe place. I can't make him believe I'm a safe place, but just saying those words, and then, of course, demonstrating, I'm not judging him, oh, how would you think that? Versus, I'm so glad you asked him, a safe place. That's right. That helps. What else? I did, didn't I? I took his question and used it against him. That is, and I appreciate that you have this question. I'm curious, before I give an answer, to make sure I'm giving the right answer that you want to hear, what do you find not compelling? Because what happens in when we talk about our faith particularly, is very common. It's so interesting we're talking about how to defend our faith. I wrote a whole book on this subject. I didn't intend on talking about it tonight, but yeah, it's on Amazon. But anyway, I wrote a whole... It really is, a whole book on this. What I have found talking to skeptics and atheists and so forth through the years is that when you have these conversations with loved ones, spouses, whomever, you end up just chasing all the rabbits. You just kind of... Because usually that's not the issue they're mad at or they're sad about. It's just a presenting issue, and you just kind of meander, and then they get more and more angry the more you try to pinpoint it. And one way to stop all that at the very beginning is, I mean this in a logical sense, forcing them to articulate what the problem is. And you're doing it kindly, gently. That's a great question. I don't know but I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. Do you mind saying a little bit more about the nature of your question? I want to make sure I understand. When you say interpretations, what exactly do you mean? And you could spend 30 minutes just asking questions of clarity, and then when you go through it, usually what happens is they discover that they don't know anything about anything. It's the truth. Really, really, really smart people can say some really, really dumb things about God because they don't know. And it works in other conversations. All Christians are hypocrites. Yeah, that's right. Conversation over. So that works. It works on YouTube. It works, but it doesn't work with a person who's thought their faith through at all. Because you need to say anything he's going to throw back. Well, just interpretations. And I was going to push back if he says, what does he mean by that? And he says, well, it just means that it's just people's interpretations. I'll say, well, which people are you talking about, and what do you mean by interpretation? You're just going to get real fine-tuned on whatever it is. And whenever he comes to grassroots, then you address that issue. If you can't address that ground zero issue, then all you do then is say what I said, which is something along the lines of, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question. And I love questions I don't know the answer to because I get to go back and do some more research. So I appreciate your question. Can we continue this conversation next week or tomorrow night or whenever? You see? So that's a safe place to ask questions. And you're not judging them, and you're also not trying to sell them a bill of goods. And you got to understand. Right? You don't have to lead them to the cross every second. That's not that season right then for some people. It's just that one little nagging whatever. But any other... we're out of time. Is there any other burning role model you want me to do before? Please. Can I do that? Do I have permission to do one more, or do I need to stop it? Because I want to respect your time with the kids, and it's okay. Yeah, I respect your no.
Somebody has to leave. Go ahead.
You have boundaries, so if you need to leave, you can go. No shame and no guilt. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Come on up. Do you mind coming up? Do you mind coming up? Good. What's your name?
Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. I'm David. Nice to meet you.
Okay, I'm a teacher.
All right.
I'm a first-year teacher.
Okay, good.
So this is iffy with me. And I have a student. We're going to call her Brenna.
Okay.
She is very difficult. She knows what she's supposed to do in the classroom, but she doesn't do it. She is an attention seeker. So she does whatever she can to disrupt everything else to get my attention. And I'm having issues with
Gotcha. So Brenna really needs validation, and she's getting a negative attention.
it. It doesn't matter whether it's negative or positive for her.
She just
She
needs
just
it.
wants attention.
Okay, so, but she does cause trouble and is receiving some negative attention by getting disciplined or whatever and whatever. All right, how old is she? I'm just curious. What grade?
She's 9.
She's okay.
Third
okay.
grade.
All right. So, Amanda, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm you and you're Brenna. Hi,
Okay.
Brenna. So glad you're at school today. How are you doing today?
Miss Pinkerton, I had this dream about you last night.
Did you? Mm-hmm. Well, one more time for school, okay? So make sure, one more time, get a little bit of time. Make sure you go to your desk and get ready for school, okay?
But Miss Pinkerton, no. I really want to tell you about this dream right
That's great. I tell you what, I want to hear about it, and we're going to hear about it a little bit later on. Right now, we have to get to your desk, okay? Thank you so much. Hey, sweetie. Is she,
now. This isn't her desk, by the way. Her desk is over there.
oh, okay.
This is like my...
That's your, okay. Brenna, why are you here?
Because I want to tell you the story.
Okay. You can't tell me the story now. I'm not listening now. I will listen at lunchtime. What you can do now, though, is go to your seat. Okay? Thank you, Brenna. Is she in her seat right now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think so.
Thank you, Brenna. Way to go. Way to go. Seriously, way to go. All right, class, let's get started. Da-da-da-da-da. All right, so,
Miss Pinkerton.
yes.
So-and-so is doing this, this, and this.
Okay, good. And I appreciate you willing to tell me. Right now, I'm right in the middle of class, though. So I'll tell you what, hold on one second. We'll come around in a second. So go ahead and have a seat. I'll come around in just a second. Brenna, your seat didn't move. It's right there.
I can't play her very well.
Okay. Class, 1 second. Okay, I'll be right back. Brenna. Why'd you not go to your seat?
Because you're not listening to me.
I understand. And just because I'm not listening to you doesn't mean you have the right to leave your desk. As the teacher, and you're as the student, means that you're supposed to do what I'm asking you to do. So this is my last warning. The next time you don't go to your seat, the very first time I request it, we'll go into the principal. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
I like to hear
Sorry.
validate. I like to hear. So you can call me ma'am. It's all right. I'm
Okay.
proud of my femininity. Do you? That's very respectful. I appreciate that. If you don't do it the first time, we'll go to the principal. If it happens again, I'm calling your parents. Do you have any questions for me?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you've got about 5 to 4 seconds, maybe tops, to get to your desk right now. Okay. Thank you.
I don't think I can play anymore.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Good enough. So let's reflect just for a little bit, and we'll be done. Just reflect for a little bit. So what are some things I do? Yeah, Jay. School year's almost over. I should have said, yeah, you got about 2 weeks by time, sister. Yes.
Medication.
You have a question? Sure. That's a great question. Is it giving her attention, or it seems like I'm giving her attention by going and sitting by her, and it's not fair for the class? I'll say 2 things. I'll start with the second one. It's not fair to the class that this nonsense has to go on, and that's why it needs to be stopped. Secondly, I am giving her some attention, but I'm giving attention to clarify consequences, and that's appropriate. And I'm not loving on her. I'm not going to ask about her mom and daddy at home. That's not the time for it. I can and will do that during lunchtime. I can and will do that during the playground time in front of. I can and will do that maybe after class or something like that when there's other adults around or whatever, teacher. That's the time to do it. But in class time is not the time. What else? So that's a great question. What else did I do with the job that stood out to you? I did not take no for an answer. Because who's the boss in the situation? Every second, I'm the boss. As a teacher and as the parent, I am the boss or not the boss. Did I scream at her? Did I call her names? Did I look agitated because she was agitating me? No, because I had boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if you do want to scream at your teenager? Yeah, teenagers are a little different. You have a lot of freedom now. Yeah. In my home, that's right, you have permission. I believe, now there's no, again, this is not, I can't think of a place in the Bible where this is exact rule. In my house, we say this, it's perfectly okay to be angry and be very, very angry. But here's the ways you can express the anger. And in my home, it's appropriate and it's okay to raise your voice, to be angry. It's okay. It's not okay to scream. Like you couldn't lose control. I hate you! I mean, they couldn't just lose control. Yeah, it works both ways, honey. Sister, I was going to say sister. It works both ways. That's why I'd say it. So when my kids get me frustrated sometimes, and on my good days, it's just good boundaries like I said no. But of course, every day, almost every day, something gets me frustrated. I've said it 15 times. And I get frustrated. I ask my kids. There are times my son's, he's nodding. No, he's not. He's smiling. There are plenty of times I get frustrated because it's the 15th time you finally said it. So I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with yelling. Now, I don't know the decibel difference, but I do know the internal difference. I do know that. One is, I said get to the car now. That's not screaming at them. That's let them know it's time and I mean it. But ideally, we don't do that. Ideally, it says, and that's why most of the time we get to a place, and I think in my parenting, and Lane can testify too, most of the time we stick around just a 3-count rule. You have 3 seconds. Just as calm, you have 3 seconds. But only at 3 do the consequences come, and they always come at 3. Teenagers are a little different. With the number game, they want to manipulate. Yes, they do. So you need a role play is what you're asking me. All right, very quickly. You're the teenager. What's make up his name or his name?
Okay.
We'll make up his name, his real name. It's Mackenzie.
All right, Mackenzie. Hi, Mackenzie. How was your day at school?
Fine.
Great. So what's an event that would cause y'all to argue him to bring it up?
This evening, yeah, he was.
Can you think in your memory bank of something that happened? Yeah, this evening. That's right. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
left the house, didn't tell us we were going, so I had to go down the street and get him when he came back.
Mm.
He didn't understand why he couldn't stay where he was.
Okay.
In a girl's house, which I've never.
Well, awesome. So Mackenzie, did you go find him, or you finally came home?
No, I found him.
Okay. So knock on the door. Mackenzie.
What are you doing? This is what I told him. What do you, did you tell mom you're going? No, come home.
Come home, Mackenzie, right now.
Yeah, so he came home. He was like, I don't understand.
Okay. So now you're Mackenzie, and I'm you.
I don't understand. I mean, why did I have to come home?
Do you genuinely not understand, or are you trying to just rebel against the no? Are you genuinely confused?
Well, I mean, I go outside all the time, and I mean, it's like, mom should have known she would have known that I was going outside.
So are you genuinely confused, or are you just trying to protest against my no? I missed your answer.
I mean, it's just not fair. I mean, it's like, I'm 13 years old. I should be able to go and do what I want to do.
It's not fair. You're 13 years old. You should be able to go and do what you do.
I just want to understand why I had to come home.
So you're genuinely interested in the answer.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm asking to be sure, because if I give you the answer, I'm just going to be sure it's not the thing where I'm giving you an answer just so that you can try to avoid the consequence of my answer. That is, you're just trying to weasel out of it. And I'm trying to make sure that's not what's going on. So do you want an answer just so you can get...
You know how I am. I mean, I like to understand what's going on with things.
Okay, good. All right. Well, okay, good. The reason why you can't do that is because it's inappropriate.
But why? I'm 13 years old.
And what does that mean? What is it when you say I'm 13? What does that mean?
I mean, I should be old enough to go and do things like this.
Yeah. And this is a perfect example why you shouldn't make decisions for yourself. So thank you. This is a good example. This is good evidence of why you can't make decisions for yourself.
That's not fair.
Yeah. Well, again, I understand that you're confused by this and it might feel unfair. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. You threw your hat? Seems like you're frustrated. What's going on inside of you? How do you feel about all this?
You guys don't let me do anything. I mean, it's like every other second you want to.
You're in a safe place. You're in a safe place. Let it out, brother. Channel your best team. All right, so, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, son. You were telling me how you were feeling.
Can I get outside of role play for just a
Sure,
second?
sure.
A lot of times what I'll do is just say, just go to your room. I'm not going to, because he wants to engage in this debate and this argument. I'm just like, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to debate. I'm not going to debate. I'm not going to, because all you're going to do, this is what I'm saying to him, all you're going to do is any answer that I give you, you're just going to refute and want to argue and debate more. So I'm just not going to go down this downward spiral. Go to your room. So that's typically how it goes.
Okay. And notice how I didn't do that.
Correct.
And we'll come back in a second. So I appreciate what you just said. And I'll tell you why I did what I did, a little nuance, a little different. So you seem real frustrated. Do you feel frustrated right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I bet. How else do you feel? Do you feel anything else? Just frustrated? It's okay to tell me how you feel. It's okay.
It's just not fair. I mean, I'm frustrated. I'm mad.
Yeah. That's tough. That's tough. No, really, I'm serious, son. I've been mad in my life too, and I know that feeling of when it feels unfair, and it's not a fun feeling to have. But that's
Well,
tough.
you don't. How do you know? You don't know what I'm feeling.
Do you really mean that?
Yes.
You really do think that I don't know the emotion of frustration?
Well, no. I mean, I think that you know what frustration is like, but you don't know how I'm feeling right now. I mean, you're not inside my head, so there's no way that you could know.
That's true, and that's also why I never said that. But anyway, about your feelings, I'm sorry that you feel frustrated. I'm sorry. I've also felt frustrated in life, and I know what that feels like. And I'm sorry you feel that way.
So just keep reinforcing that. I mean, I'm outside.
Yeah. What else is Mackenzie going to do? What else would he say?
He'll say,
Yeah. I'm sorry you're angry. Is there anything I can do to help you with your anger? Mackenzie, what else can I do for you? Anything I can do for you?
I don't know. We haven't gotten here. I don't know what he would respond.
Yeah, exactly.
How he would respond.
Yeah.
usually I just kind of just shut down because I just don't know. Because when he says things, he questions me, and then I get this anger, which I found that I'm allowed to do. I get just so mad, but I don't want to respond in a negative way, so I just don't say anything.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I would say one quick thing, and we'll stop, and then we'll reflect on it. Mackenzie, if you're really interested in why you can't go to a girl's house at the age of 13 when I don't know what's going on, if you're really interested about that, let's talk about it. I do want to talk about it, but I'm going to wait till you calm down. And when you think you've kind of dealt with your feelings and so forth, which you take as much time as you need to. If you want to talk tomorrow about it, we'll talk. You want to sleep on it, that's fine. But when you talk, let's go to eat sometime. Let's over dinner or whatever. Let's chat about it. We'll talk about why is that rule is in place. And that's a good question to ask, and why is it? Because I want to make sure you do understand why it is we have these rules. I do understand it. Now, it doesn't mean when I explain it to you, you're going to agree with it and you'll understand it. But I do want you to understand why we have these kind of rules. So I do want to talk about it, and we will talk about it. We'll just talk about it when you kind of dealt with your anger for a little while and stuff. Because I'm afraid right now in this situation, this condition you're in, you won't be able to hear me very well. I'm afraid I'll get too angry and I won't be able to hear you very well, and I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I hear you really well. So let's make sure we do this when we're not so mad. Is that okay, Mackenzie? Good. Well, good. Well, even if you forget, I'll be sure to bring it up because I want to make sure that we do talk about that. Okay, honey? I love you so much and appreciate that. Mm-hmm. If he throws the hat, yeah. If he throws the hat, I don't, because he's not damaging the hat. If it caused damage to it, if it kicked the door or something, I'd say, see, now I have to pay for that. That's my property. You're crossing my boundaries. You don't hurt my door. I don't care who you are. I don't let a thief do that. I won't let you do that. And if you do that, I will work you out of it. You'll work long enough to pay that off until you'll never do that again. But it also lets me know if he does it a pattern like his shoes and they're getting muddy, or if you throw our hats and they're really getting ripped up, whatever, say, when you do that, I know you're mad. When you do that right there, it tells me, that communicates to me that you don't care about your stuff, and I had to pay for that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that me and Dad or me and Mom, we're going to talk about that.